Looked like he had a disability. I don't know what his diagnosis was. I did drop a young man, and I said, okay, what are other 22-year-olds doing? Again, what would the person be doing if he or she didn't have a disability? So I said, oh, well, John, I said, are you working or going to college? Or, oh, no. I said, well, you living on your own? Or you living with your mom and dad? No, I'm in a group home. I was living with mom and dad, but now I'm in a group home. And I said, well, so, but you're not working, you're not going to school? No. And I said, well, why not? He says, well, I don't have to. I said, what do you mean you don't have to? Well, because I have a disability. This kid walks, talks, you know. He could be doing any kind of jobs. And I said, well, why don't you have to work? Well, because I have a disability. And I said, well, okay, but I said, John, I said, you get an SSI? This was several years ago. It was $695 a month at the time. I said, so you get an SSI? Yeah. And I said, is that okay with you? The rest of your life you're just going to get SSI? Guess so. And I said, well, you know, a lot of young people, I said, they get a job when they're in high school, you know, McDonald's or Burger King, and they, you know, start making minimum wage, and then they get good at that, and then they get another job, and they make more money. And right, in our society, we always go for the job to make more money. You don't usually change jobs to make less money. And I said, then maybe they go to vocational school, or they go to community college, or you know, they go to McDonald's University or whatever, and they get better and better, and they keep making more money. And I said, so, you know, what would you think about that? And he says, oh, Kathy says, yeah, I want that. I want that. And I said, well, okay. I said, then we got to get you into some activities where you're learning, where you're getting some job skills. You know, then when you get a job, you can get off SSI. And at that point, his eyes welled up with tears. And he said, Kathy, why didn't anybody else ever tell me this? His mom and dad had no expectations for him. People at his school had no expectations for him. Oh, don't worry, you don't have to work. You're going to just be on SSI the rest of your life. Well, if we sat down and talked and said, okay, if we sat down kids and said, okay, do you want this or do you want this? So that we give them the power over their own lives. And too many times we're the ones that keep taking the power, and we don't give them those opportunities. So, the reason we have diagnoses, I mean, the reason we have labels like we do, is that they're just a passport to services, okay? So, Benjamin had to have all those labels. Your kids, you know, people with disabilities in this room had to have certain labels, diagnoses to qualify, to be eligible for services. And that's fine, if that's what we want them for. The problem with the labels is that they create thinking errors on our part, and on society's part, that lead to negative consequences. And so how do we use labels? And this is the end of the bad news, and when we get to the good news, how we can do stuff better. We focus on problems and deficits. Of course, that starts in the doctor's office when the doctor diagnosed my son and told me everything my son was never going to do. And I started questioning people way back then because Benjamin had a pediatrician, he had a pediatric orthopedic, he had a pediatric neurosurgeon, neurologist, he had a pediatric ophthalmologist, and I realized that they only see children. So I started thinking, how do they know what's possible for adults? How do they know what's possible? I mean, you tell me what's going to happen in my son's life as an adult. And I thought, he doesn't know any adults with disabilities. He only sees kids. So I thought, he only knows what he learned in college or what he learned in the medical book because he doesn't have any personal experience. We use it to predict the future. Okay, because your child has this diagnosis, got all these problems, therefore your child will never fill in the blank. And we oftentimes believe all that kind of stuff. We have low expectations for people with disabilities, but we hold them to a higher standard. I was presenting one year, I think it was in Iowa or somewhere, and it was a group of about 60 people, and I get invited to present at provider agencies. And so these were all staff people who work in group homes. And so I asked them, I said, and you know, I mean, it took a while for me to realize years ago that a group home is not supposed to be the end-all and be-all. The group home is supposed to be like a way station on your way to greater independent living, okay? But for too many people, it becomes, you know, the end. And so right, the people in group home are supposed to be helping people with disabilities learn greater independent living skills so that they can, you know, move to a place like just have a roommate, and maybe one day they actually live on their own with some, you know, in-home supports and stuff. Anyway, so I asked this group of 60 people. I said, are you guys still running goals for people like, for example, you know, Mary will wash her dishes within 30 minutes of eating. Yeah. Mary will make up her bed within 30 minutes of getting up. Mm-hmm. Mary will balance her checkbook, you know, within a week of getting Mary will be responsible with her money, you know, all that kind of stuff. I said, you guys writing goals like that? And they said, oh yeah. And I said, okay, how many of you guys do this kind of stuff? I said, do all of you wash your dishes within 30 minutes of eating? I mean, you never did. I mean, now we got TiVo, but, you know, I said, you know, I'll wash the dishes later. My favorite TV show's coming up. Oh, now I'm too tired to wash it. Now you get up the next morning to go to work. I don't have time to wash them right now. I said, so you've left those dishes in the sink for 24 hours. So we're going to impose standards on people with disabilities that we don't meet ourselves. So there's one article on my website that I call it the disability double standard. We have one set of rules for people that don't have disabilities. We have another set of rules for people that have disabilities. And until we say, no, that is not okay, we're not going to make much progress. And so, again, we have really low expectations for people. We're going to hold them to higher standards than we meet ourselves. And when we put people in that position, we put them in a box that they cannot get out of, because they can never meet our standards. Well, because we don't meet the standards anyway. We have a presumption of incompetence. We look at people with disabilities and we presume that they're inherently incompetent, and we force them to prove their competence. When all of you in this room that do not have disabilities, when you left your parents' home when you were 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, did your parents think you were competent to leave home? No, but you did it anyway. And look, you survived. You're here with us today. When you bought your first home, were you competent? Did you understand the financial implications? Did you read the fine print about that balloon payment? No, but you did it anyway. When you got married, when you had your first child, were you competent? No. When you had your fourth child, were you competent? No. Okay, but you did it anyway. So all of us in this room that don't have disabilities, we are presumed to be competent. And we screw up and we make mistakes and we learn from them. But we don't allow people with disabilities to even make mistakes. We've got to protect them. We've got to protect them into helplessness. And then we say, no, they can't live on their own because they don't know how to do something. Well, where did they learn that? They learned to be helpless because of what we did. Okay? We have to make people earn the right to belong. Again, every single child in this country grows up to be adults. They're born included. And we make people with disabilities earn the right to belong. And we don't do that to any other group of people. We make them exempt from responsibility. So the young man that I said, he said, I don't have to work. They have a disability. Well, people with disabilities want to be responsible. Doesn't mean they're not going to balk sometimes. I mean, I balk. I don't want to be responsible for all the stuff I have to do, but I have to do it, okay? As my kids were growing up, they have more responsibility as they grew, and we're going to talk about that some more in the keynote, in the breakout. But people want to be responsible. When we say to them, we don't think you can work, we don't think you can live on your own, we don't think you can do this. We were saying to them, we don't believe in you. We don't trust you. And they will live up or down to our expectations. But when we say, yes, you need to be responsible. You need to be this way or this way, whatever this way is. If you're a kid in school or if you're a young adult, you gotta be doing young adult things. Be responsible like a young adult. Then we're saying to them, we believe in you, we trust you, we know you can do it. So, shifting gears. There's some inappropriate behavior for you right there, right? So Albert Einstein said, the significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. So we're going to get a whole new way of thinking. And we're going to deconstruct disability and recognize that what we call a disability is just a social construct. If I say, tell me what a disability is, you can give me the DD, the developmental disability definition, but then there's a totally different definition for workers' comp. There's a totally different definition for people that have been in the war, soldiers, veterans. Totally different definition for civilians that have a car accident. So a disability is what the government says it is. And the government can and does change its mind on a regular basis of what a disability is. The original developmental disability was quote-unquote mental retardation. That was it. There was just one. And over time, Congress said, no, we're going to put cerebral palsy in there, and then we'll put autism and learning to, and they changed the categories, okay? So we're not going to deconstruct it in the United States of America, or in Topeka, or in Kansas, or in Texas where I live, but if we deconstruct it in our own hearts and minds, then we can start to make some progress. So first and foremost, it's just a medical diagnosis. Everybody in this room's got a medical diagnosis. Is your medical diagnosis the most important thing about you? No. So I'm going to come over here. Marcia. Marcia? Yes. So Marcia, let's pretend like we're meeting for the first time, and you introduce yourself to me. I'm Marcia, I'm Kathy, and I've had a hysterectomy. How are you? Now hopefully Marcia's going to say, Kathy, too much information, right? And she would be totally right. But isn't that what we do to too many people with disabilities? That they are known by their diagnosis instead of their name. I meet parents all the time, parents of school-age kids. And they'll come up to me to comments at the break and say, okay, Kathy, so I want to ask you about my kid. So my kid is 10, and blah, 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 and all these problems, and what his diagnosis is, and I'll stop them and I'll say, wait a minute, what is your child's name? They've told me the diagnosis, they told me all the kid's so-called problems, they don't even tell me his name. And I'll say, stop. And I said, before you go any further, I said, before you tell me one more thing I said, tell me 3 wonderful things about your child. And most parents cannot do that. Because see, that's not what the system values. The service system values problems and diagnoses because that's what their job is to deal with those. And so we as parents sometimes end up seeing our children through the lens, through the eyes of people in the service system because we have to learn to talk their way. We have to learn to talk the system's way. And I say, no, we ought to make the system talk our way. Like plain English, let's talk about gifts and strengths and abilities. Let's talk about those things too. Those are what ought to be driving a person's life, not what their diagnosis is, not what they cannot do. So, if your medical diagnosis, if you don't reveal that to every Tom, Dick, and Harry, then we shouldn't do that with our kids, okay? And there are times when we need to share information about a person, but we'll talk about that in a second. But it's just a medical diagnosis. I don't think, I mean, how many of you knew somebody that was already coming here? I mean, like, so some of you are strangers, but did some of you come and see somebody, oh, I know her? Okay, so I don't think any of you would go up and say, oh, Mary, how are you? Oh, well, how's your husband? Oh, he's fine. He started taking Viagra last week. You would not do that, would you? If you do, shame on you. But the same is true. I mean, we cannot be sharing all this private personal information about our children, whether they're children or adults, because most of the time it's nobody's business, okay? Sometimes it is irrelevant, but sometimes it's not. The wonderful Norman Cousin says, never deny the diagnosis, but always deny the negative prognosis. And what he's talking about here is the death of dreams. Because we as parents are told when our kids are diagnosed, don't dream anymore. You don't need to dream. Because, you need to be realistic, right? That's what we're told, be realistic. So I never believed in that. I always thought that we needed to have the same dreams for Benjamin that we had before the diagnosis. We needed to have the same dreams for Benjamin that we had for his sister. And so as a result, we talk to our kids like, well, one of these days when you kids grow up and go to college, or one of these days when you kids grow up and leave home, or one of these days when you kids grow up and get a job, or one of these, so our kids would talk back to us like that. Mommy, when I grow up, and so Benjamin didn't talk till he was 3 and a half, and once he started talking, he never did baby talk. He just one day literally, we thought he'd never talk. He would just make a few sounds, but he didn't do baby talk words. And then one day, like somebody just flipped a switch and he started speaking in paragraphs. I mean, literally and he sounded like a little professor. And I don't know what happened. I mean, I have no idea really. It's like when those things happen. And so, like all kids that learn to talk, he had his favorite word of the day, word of the week, word of the month, right, when the kids learn to talk. And they say that word over and over again, and you get sick of that word, and you get a new word, right? And so Benjamin had spinal cord surgery when he was 3, and his favorite word became pediatric orthopedic surgeon. And he would just sit in the car seat and go, pediatric orthopedic surgeon, pediatric orthopedic surgeon, pediatric orthopedic surgeon. I said, yes, Benjamin, you know that word, get a new word. Well, we're still in therapy mode at that time, and he's 3 and a half years old, and he says to me and the therapist one day, Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to be a pediatric orthopedic surgeon, because he was seeing this doctor all the time with his surgery. And I said, good for you, Benjamin. I said, because they make a lot of money, and you can take care of me and Daddy when we get older. And you all know what happened next, right? The OT pulled me aside and started, reading me to write at. You can't talk to him like that. He's never going to be able to be a doctor. He has cerebral palsy. He doesn't have any fine motor skills. Yada 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 yada. And I said, stop. I said, it is not up to you, and it's not up to me to decide what's possible for Benjamin. It's only up to Benjamin. Well, you need to be realistic. And I said, no. I said, we are not realistic with kids who don't have disabilities. We're not. So if my daughter came to me and said, Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor, I might think that is the stupidest idea I ever heard. This kid can't stand the sight of mucus, blood, whatever, so there's no way she can be a doctor. But I'm not going to tell her that. I tell her the same thing. Good for you. I mean, they make a lot of money and take it, and so I said, if I'm not realistic with my daughter, I'm not going to do, again, that double standard, okay? Because if you crush somebody's dreams once, you pretty much crush them forever. Because they'll be afraid to ever again tell you something that they want to do, out of fear that you're going to say, no, you can't do that either. They'll just give up. And I've had people tell me, oh, people with disabilities are lazy, they're manipulative, they're this. No, most of the time they've given up. They've just given up. Because people have said, no, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't. We don't know that. So I said to this therapist that day, I said, when my son is an adult and he still wants to be a doctor, he will figure out how to be a doctor who happens to have cerebral palsy. I said, on the other hand, he might say at some point, Mom, that's probably not the right job for me. And I said, I'm going to let him figure that out in his own time and in his own way. Again, let him come to that conclusion instead of me crushing his hopes and dreams. But the other thing I said to her that day, I said, he's 3 and a half years old. I think he might change his mind. Have any of you guys changed your mind? I said, yesterday he wanted to be a garbage man. And the day after he's going to be a farmer. Okay, so what every single job he wants to do, I'm going to say, well, you can't do that, you have cerebral palsy. So I've had people say to me, adults with disabilities, no, I have autism, so therefore, no, I have Down syndrome, so therefore, And we taught Benjamin early on. I mean, he overheard somebody say about him, Benjamin has extraordinary hearing. Some of your kids might. Benjamin can hear stuff in another county, okay? Don't try whispering, and he memorizes it. He's got this incredible auditory memory. He overheard somebody say, he can't do that because he has CP. Now, I didn't find that out until accident, that I was trying to help Benjamin learn to do something when he was 7 years old. And he said, no, I can't do that. And I said, Ben, you don't know that you can't do it, you got to first try. I can't do that. And I said, Benjamin, I said, if you tried, you can't do it, that's okay, but you don't know until you try. And he says, no, I can't do that because I'm a CP kid. And he was just about a dead kid that day. And I said, Benjamin, I said, what are you talking about? And I, got it out of him. This woman, he overheard her say that. And I said, Benjamin, I said, you are not a CP kid. I said, you are Benjamin. I said, you're Emily's brother. You're my son. You're daddy's son. You're a second grader. You're a Cub Scout, but you are not a CP kid. And I said, you are never going to use your disability as an excuse. I mean, now, there's some things I'm never going to do, just because my body won't do them, my brain won't do them, and that's okay. There's some stuff my husband's never going to do, some things my daughter's never going to do, something Benjamin's never going to do. But you're not going to blame it on your diagnosis, okay? Because that's the way we make people helpless and independent. Oh, he can't, he's got this, so therefore he can't do that. And again, people didn't live up to that or down to that expectation. So it's just, if we in this room don't deny the negative prognosis, who will? Because you don't know, there's plenty of people out there that will do that. Again, deconstructing disability. The DD Act, the Federal Developmental Disabilities Act, passed in the mid-70s, says disability is a natural part of the human experience. It goes on to say, therefore, and the preamble is in one of your handouts I gave you. The preamble to this, the beginning of this law, has since been incorporated in the American Disabilities Act, into special ed law, and any kind of disability law. It goes on to say that therefore people with disabilities should be included in the mainstream of society, politics, everything, okay? It's as natural for my son to have cerebral palsy as to not have it. Those of us in this room, there have always been people with disabilities in the world, right? There always will be. When are we going to get beyond this whole notion of this cure and prevention? We don't want people like that. What? What is the message of cure and prevention to people with disabilities? We don't want people like you. Okay? Those of us in this room that presently do not have a disability, if we live long enough, we will have one. To an accident, illness, or the aging process. And then it becomes real simple. What do you want when it's you? Not if, but when. What do you want when it's you? How do you want to be treated? Where do you want to spend your time? What kind of life do you want to live? I want to live the same kind of life that I live now. I might need a power wheelchair, I might need a communication device, I might need a lot of assistive technology, a lot of support. I'd want to live the same kind of life. So with that in mind, we have to take the word wrong out of our vocabulary, because there's nothing wrong with you if you have a disability. I got a quote in my book that says, do you know what it's like to feel wrong 24 hours a day? Do you know what it's like to be disapproved of, not only for what you do and say and think, but for who you are? And we think, well, we don't talk that way, Kathy. Actually, we do. And we're so used to, language is a habit. And we're so used to talking certain ways that we don't hear ourselves anymore. So I was presenting at a conference one time, and another speaker was up here, and it was the leadership training, and it was parents and adults with disabilities. And it was time for a break, and then I was going to come up and be the next speaker. And so the host came up and she said, okay, let's thank so-and-so and take your break now. And then Kathy Snow is coming up, and she's a parent, and she's going to be doing the next session. And so this other mom ran up to me and she goes, oh, you're our next speaker? And I said, yeah. And she goes, you have a child? And I said, yeah. You're a parent? Yeah. What's wrong with your son? Well, she didn't mean it in any bad way. It's like we're in a club, right? What's wrong with your child? Okay. She didn't mean it to be cruel or anything, but you see just the way we think? Well, if you've been talked about what's wrong with you all your life, how do you make yourself right in the eyes of other people, of your own parents? When I got to talking to her, she said, well, what's wrong with your son? And I said, there's nothing wrong with my son. But he has a disability. I said, yeah, but there's nothing wrong with him. He has cerebral palsy. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with him, okay? But that's what we equate it to, okay? So that word wrong has just got to come out of our vocabulary. We have to recognize that a disability just represents a body part that works differently. Does anybody in this room have a normal body? Because if you do, come on up here. and we're gonna spend the rest of today checking you out. Because I don't know what a normal body looks like, okay? And this is important because when Benj was little, he started walking his walker when he was 18 months old, and he's just hanging on for dear life, right? You know, and not paying attention to anything else, just every focus. And little 5-year-old kids would come up to me and say to me, what? They'd see him in the mall. Little 5-year-old kids would run up to me and say, what? What's wrong with him? Where's a 5-year-old child learn to talk like that? Okay. Also, the presumption of incompetence. One of the manifestations of the presumption of incompetence, if there's a person with a disability and a companion, could be a parent, could be a staff, could be a sibling, family member, whatever. Two people together, one has a disability, one doesn't. People come up and they'll talk to the person who doesn't have a disability, they'll ignore the person with a disability. So, you know, we'll go to a restaurant. My friend Larry has cerebral palsy like my son. Larry and I done a presentation at a big conference, and Larry has, awkward speech, and Larry drives a scooter, and Larry, it's hard for him to modulate his voice. So I talk like it, and I'm not making fun of him. That's just, it has a hard time getting his mouth, and he can't really talk very low. And we were at this restaurant, and server comes over and she looks at me and she says, "What would you like, ma'am?" And I told her, and she wouldn't even look at her. "And what would he like?" I said, "I don't know. You're gonna have to ask Larry. I don't have my mind reader's hat on today. You got to actually talk to Larry. You got to look at Larry and talk to him. But that's the presumption of incompetence, okay? And so this 5-year-old kid was not talking to my son. He's talking to me. Anyway, I would say at the time, I said, there's nothing wrong with him. And I knew what was important, and the same is true whether the kid is 3 or whether the person's 30. What was most important was not what that child heard me say, but what my son heard me say. And a lot of people would just say, if somebody says, "What's wrong with him?" If I had just said, "Well, he has cerebral palsy," then what is the unspoken message to Benjamin? There is something wrong, because I'm not saying that there's not. Your silence means assent or agreement. And so I'd say there's nothing wrong with him, he has cerebral palsy. Well, an adult that would make sense, but just a 5-year-old kid, they don't want to know the diagnosis. They want to know what is that little shiny thing, the ratcheted wheels that makes a little clicking sound as he goes. So I would say to them, there's nothing wrong with him, he has cerebral palsy. His legs don't work as good as yours, and the walker helps him walk. And the little kid said, "Okay." And I thought, okay, that works. And I said that for 18 months until I got in the partners program and I met the adults. And I realized from learning from them what my son was still hearing me say. I'd say, his legs don't work as good as yours. And what is my son hearing me say? He's not as good. He's not as good. That's what my son is hearing me say. Again, it's how other people experience something. I thought that was a nice thing to say. I thought that was a good thing. No, Benjamin's hearing it a totally different way. And so I thought, what have I done? So I went back through my partner's notes, and that's when I found this. I don't remember who said that. It was a person with disability, one of our speakers. And I went through my partner's notes, and I thought, I'm not doing this right. And so from then on, and Benjamin, when he could speak for himself, he did, but at that time he couldn't. Little kids would come up and they still say, "What's wrong with him?" I'd say, "There's nothing wrong with him. He has cerebral palsy. His legs work differently than yours." And then walk it up some more. So you have autism, maybe you're going to communicate differently. You have Down syndrome, maybe you're going to learn differently. You have cerebral palsy, you're going to do stuff differently. So we don't need to change Benjamin. We just need to accommodate his body parts work differently. So he needs a computer instead of a pen and paper. He needs a power wheelchair instead of walking. He needs a laptop computer, whatever. Also, disability is a consequence of the environment. Does a person always have a disability? I'm going to say it depends on what kind of environment they're in. So, in our home, which of course is wheelchair accessible, Benjamin has supports, accommodations, assistive technology. In our home, Benjamin no longer has a disability. He still has cerebral palsy, but that's just a medical diagnosis. You all see the difference? If we put Benjamin in an environment where he doesn't have assistive technology, supports, and accommodations, we can make him helpless, independent. We can make him have a severe, profound disability. Okay? So again, we don't need to change the person. We just need to change the environment. So some of you like this story that years ago, this is way before cell phones, there was a woman that I met. She has a visual disability. People describe her as, quote unquote, totally blind since birth. She never had any sight whatsoever. She was a keynote speaker at a big disability conference, big national conference in Washington, D.C., big Marriott hotel, room like this one in the sense of no windows. Okay, it was an interior ballroom. Like 2,000 people in this keynote. She's up at the podium, giving her speech. Unknown to the audience, the hotel staff comes in. And she told them to do this. They turn all the lights off, so it's pitch black. Now, today people just put out their cell phones. Didn't have them back then. A couple of cigarette lighters came out. Okay, but she could hear people scooting their chairs back, and people were, the noise level got real loud. She rapped on the podium. She goes, everybody settle down, everybody calm down. I had them do that, everything's under control. Still pitch black. She said, take your seats, be quiet, everything's okay. She got them all quiet again, still pitch black. She said, okay, now who has a disability? She said, I'm fine. There's a couple other people in this room that are fine. She said, electric lights are assistive technology devices for people who have sight. All right, think about it. She changed the environment and she effectively imposed a significant disability on 99.9% of people that work. So again, we don't need to change people, we got to change the environment. We're talking about language. Robert Fulghum, the guy that wrote Everything You Need to Know You Learned in Kindergarten, says sticks and stones may break our bones, but words will break our hearts. And we know that's true. So it's important that we use people first language, and of course, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, not that it's not critically important, but you guys have a whole article in your packet, so that's your homework assignment. But people first language is not about political correctness. It was started by people with disabilities back in the 1970s. There's a lot of people who are very slow learners. Some people haven't caught on yet. But they were started by people with disabilities who said, I'm not my diagnosis, I'm not my disability, I'm a person first. And I can speak for myself. And so again, there's a lot of examples that you can look at. But it's important to think about how important language is. And I just want to point out one about birth defect. Instead of congenital disability, we should say congenital disability, just means you're born with it. Birth defect. So March of Dimes and Easter Seals, and people say, Kathy, don't pick on them, they do good work, they raise money for NICUs and all this kind of stuff. Yes, they do. However, for years, for decades, their mantra was, let's prevent birth defects. Well, the message to people with disabilities, because my son, and some of the adults in this room, would be considered to have birth defects. So they're defective. People are defective. So let's prevent birth defects. Well, they were sort of under some bit of pressure about, their language. So now, again, what's the message to people with disabilities? Well, we don't want people like you because you're defective. Let's prevent it. Let's prevent them or cure them. So we still have so much work to do in our society as far as what great big institutional forces, the CID, all these things in Washington, they still use some of this old language. But they started changing their method to, let's have healthy babies. So you think, okay, well that's better, right? Not really. So let's say that you're going to go meet your next door neighbor's going to be pregnant with her first baby. And you go over there and say, oh, congratulations. You have your first baby. What do you want, a boy or a girl? What is the answer 100% of the time? Doesn't matter as long as the baby's healthy. The unspoken message is, as long as the baby doesn't have a disability. Because we know that it's estimated that 90% of all babies being diagnosed in utero with Down syndrome are being aborted today. Iceland, Denmark, they're trying to wipe out Down syndrome by aborting babies. They're going to be the first countries, they proudly say. So again, back to my Google keywords, I saw an article a couple of years ago. It was from Vancouver, British Columbia. And a doctor there has come up with the earliest test, the safest test, done earliest to diagnose Down syndrome in utero. This is a good news story, okay, from this reporter who was talking about how great this was. And the doctor's presumption is that if every woman is tested as early as possible, and it's most accurate and all this kind of stuff, then the assumption is that you're diagnosed with a baby with Down syndrome and you'll have an abortion. And so he was quoted in this article as saying that if everybody does this, this is the quote. And I should have made a copy of it and put it on the slide. I didn't think to do that. But he said, if everybody does this, then we can eradicate this disease in our lifetimes. So Down syndrome is considered to be a disease. Is it? No, of course not. We'll always have people with Down syndrome, we always will, unless we kill them before they're born. But that's the power of language, okay? If it's a birth defect, or if you're unhealthy, and I got into a discussion one time with some people about whether my son was healthy or not. And I said, they said, well, he's not healthy because he has a disability. I said, are you kidding me? I said, basically the healthiest member of our family. I said, yeah, like every 5 years he needs a new $50,000 power wheelchair. Okay, but he's healthier than anybody in the family. And they said, well, maybe we have to redefine what healthy means, okay? And we do, but we disparage and diminish and marginalize people that don't meet some, quote-unquote norm. So I hope you'll all, embrace people first language. I'm going to push the envelope and say, this word also has to go, in my opinion. And yes, it's the same root word as disability, but it has a totally different meaning. And you used to not hear the word disabled very often. You just didn't hear it so much. Now you hear it all the time, but not about people with disabilities. So used to, on the the traffic report in the morning or the evening radio news, the traffic report would be, you know, we've got a stalled car on Interstate 70. And what do you hear them say today? Have a disabled vehicle. What does that mean? It's broken down, non-functioning, it's bothering us, get it out of the way. The reporter is choosing to say that. He could still say there's a stalled car, okay? But that word has sort of become in vogue. Flight attendants on an airplane talking about the smoke detector in the lavatory. They'll announce every time you fly, it's against federal law to tamper with, destroy, or disable the smoke detector. That means make it not work. Sports guys used to say, so-and-so is on the injured reserve. And that's really accurate. He's the person who's been injured and they're in reserve until they're no longer injured. And what do they say today? It's on the disabled list. It means you don't belong, you're not of value anymore. So society's come to use the word in total ways that it was totally never meant to, but it still now is a negative. So Benjamin was about 13 or 14 years, we were in the mall, tooling him down, he's got his power wheelchair, and some man came up to him, some stranger, you know, a lot of times old men, you gotta be careful talking about old people because my husband and I are getting to be one, but some old man came up to me and he said, excuse me, son, and he said, I see that you're disabled. And Benjamin, you know, he looked at him and the guy kept talking, I don't know what he was saying. And Benjamin was sitting there and he gets his pointer finger up and he said, sir! And finally the guy stopped talking and Benjamin said, excuse me, sir. He said, I have a disability, but I'm not disabled. And just the self-image of that, okay? Because here is the definition. I mean, you know, the Americans with Disabilities Act is not called the Disabled Americans Act. Special ed law is not called the Disabled Children's Act. Both of those use people first language, which is you put the person first. It's Americans with disabilities, okay? Not disabled Americans. But this is the federal definition from the IRS tax code. Permanently and totally disabled, the person cannot engage in any substantial gainful activity because of a physical or mental condition that can be expected to last continuously for at least a year or lead to death. Well, there might be a few people, a very small percentage of people that this applies to, but the vast majority of people with disabilities, this doesn't apply to them. And that's the term that we use though, okay? And so unless the person really is never going to be able to work, and most people with disabilities that I know, everybody can do something. They might need a lot of assistive technology and a lot of supports, but I don't know hardly anybody that can do nothing. They can't contribute in some way. They can't be a participant in some way. I hope we'll push the envelope and take this word out of our vocabulary. Adults with disabilities, when my son was young, said, Kathy, I hated being called that when I was a kid. And I hate it as an adult. Well, I kept using it because I'm surrounded by all these other parents. Right? And we're special needs parents, or those special needs kids, and we're just all special. Okay? And then again, these adults said, Kathy, I hate that. So, well, you know, it took me a while to get it, that I need to learn and listen from the adults with disabilities because my 3-year-old son is going to grow, a 3-year-old child with a disability is going to grow up to be an adult with a disability. I thought I better start respecting what these adults are telling me. And so I had a hard time, again, language is a habit. I met a lady I hadn't seen in a while. My kids were like primary school age with me. And I introduced them, you know, here's Emily and Benjamin, and I said, you know, Benjamin has special needs. What's the reaction that I got from this woman when I said my son has special needs? Okay, well, it's a 3-hitter. Pity, first it's pity, right? She comes over past, oh, I am so sorry. You know, what's wrong with him? And my son is right there. How many ways can I let a perfect stranger hurt my son? But see, who opened the door? I did, by using that term. This word does nothing but generate pity. Furthermore, it increases segregation. If you say somebody has special needs, then they got to be in a special program. If it's a special program, it's going to be a segregated program. So, if we thought kids with disabilities, adults with special needs, were so special, then when the doctor diagnosed my son, he would have charged in the room and said, congratulations, Mrs. Snow, you've given birth to a special needs child. That's not what happens, right? No. If we thought they were so special, why are they the ones that get put up for adoption? Why are they the last ones to be adopted? Why are they the ones that we're going to kill them before they're born? Okay, so there's nothing good about this term. It's old-fashioned, it's antiquated, and people with disabilities don't like it. So just that alone is enough reason to stop talking. Leo Tolstoy says, everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. So we want the world to change out there, but where does the change have to start? With us in this room, okay? So let's only use labels in disability world. If we have to use a person's label, their diagnosis, it's fine to do it at an IEP, IFSP, ISP, person syndrome, PCP, I mean, on one of those plans. I like to call them poo-poo plans, pee-pee plans. Boy, we got plans at the wazoo, right? So if you got to use it there, yeah, or at the doctor's office, or for eligibility criteria. But in general, otherwise it shouldn't come, it's not anybody's business. All the stuff that Benjamin got involved in when he was growing up, and now as an adult, we don't go, and he doesn't, go and tell people he has cerebral palsy. I mean, if somebody asks him, yeah, I'll say. But the point is that it's not relevant. Most of the time it's not relevant. If we lead with the diagnosis, and somebody doesn't know, say Benjamin, or your kids, or the people you work with, then people go to a stereotype. See, if you say, well, he has autism. Oh, people think, oh, they're the ones that do this all the time. Well, some do and some don't, okay? Oh, he has cerebral palsy. Oh, he's sitting in a wheelchair drooling, Some do, some don't. Oh, he has Down syndrome. Oh, they're the ones that are so happy all the time. Oh, they're like little kids. They're just always so happy. No, I know people with Down syndrome that cut you out. They get mad, okay? But you see people go to the stereotype. I mean, those of you that are parents, or those of you that work in the field, those of you that are parents especially, what do you know about disability before your kid was born? Nothing. I mean, I could have been a fourth grade school teacher who said, I don't want a kid like that in my class. I would hope I wouldn't be that way. But you don't know until you actually get personally involved. And so people that are not personally involved will go to the stereotype. And then the stereotype is always a negative, okay? So only use labels in those very narrow places. When we do need to share information about a person, and one mom told me years ago, she goes, oh no, Kathy, you're wrong. I have to tell people, I get my daughter involved in stuff in the community, I tell them that she has Down syndrome so they'll know what she needs. Do any two people with Down syndrome have the same needs? Any two people with autism have the same needs? Any two people with cerebral palsy have the same needs? No, okay? Again, people just go to the stereotype. So when we do need to share information, share what the person's needs are, not the diagnosis, okay? And so that means that we have to reframe it instead of talking about their problems. Again, if we say, well, I need to tell him, Benjamin's got a problem doing this, and got a problem doing this. Okay, when I've got my glasses on, I don't go around saying I have a problem seeing. I say I need my glasses, I wear glasses, okay? So we're going to reframe stuff. So instead of talking about Benjamin and that he has a problem doing this, or has a problem with his legs, or has a problem with his hands, or doesn't have fine motor skills, or that, I can describe Benjamin for you the old way, and you don't always say problem. Sometimes you just say can't or doesn't. But I can say, well, Benjamin can't walk. Benjamin can't write with a pencil. Benjamin can't feed himself. Benjamin can't go to the bathroom by himself. Okay, that would be the traditional way. The better way, more respectful, more accurate way is, Benjamin needs or uses a power wheelchair to get around. Benjamin needs a computer to do his schoolwork on. Benjamin needs adapted silverware and utensils so that he can eat by himself. Benjamin needs a little help going to the bathroom. Which child's got a better chance of being included at school, the first or the second one? Second one. What about getting a job, first or the second one? Most important question is, which person feels better about himself? Okay? I've had adults with disabilities tell me, Kathy, all they talk about is my problems. I feel like I'm this big one barrel of problems. Okay? So, again, those of you that have a job now or have had a job, I want you to think back to that job interview. During that job interview, did you tell your potential employer everything you don't know how to do? Did you tell them all your problems? Why not? Because you want to get the job, right? You're not stupid, right? Okay, so you lied by omission, right? You lied by omission. Not only that, you exaggerated just a little bit, right? That's what we do. Those of us in this room that don't have disabilities, we do everything to make ourselves look good. Unfortunately, what we've learned in the service system is let's make people look as bad as possible. Because what we learn as parents, what we learn from the system is, the more problems your kid has, the more what? The more services you get. And sometimes that ends up being more segregation, okay? And so on the way to the meeting, the pee-pee-poo-poo meeting, we go through the diagnostic drive-through and pick up about 3 or 4 more labels so that we can say, okay, now my kid's got even more problems. You say, oh, I want my child included also. Oh, lady, your kid's got too many problems to be included. You just shot yourself in the foot. So we have to start rethinking how we do stuff and what the outcomes are. So instead of talking about these got, behavior problems, challenging behavior, that term always bothered me, challenging behavior. It's not challenging the person who's doing it. I mean, we're the ones that are challenged, supposedly, okay, or behavior problems. Well, if somebody tried to control my behavior, that'd be pretty challenging. You know, can we change somebody else's behavior? Don't even put behavior we can change is wrong, okay? So, but instead of talking about behavior problems, that's the number one way to get somebody segregated and excluded, talking about behavior problems. I mean, I've even heard people say, oh, we can handle those ortho, or we can handle the Down syndrome, we can't handle those behavior, whatever the other category is, can't handle those behavior. So they're gonna say, he needs behavior supports. Everybody in this room uses behavior supports. Some of us call them caffeine, or nicotine, or chocolate, or calling in sick when you're not really sick, because you want to take a mental health day, or men going to play golf when your mother-in-law's coming for a visit, okay? The point is that behavior support is just whatever gets you through the day. That's what all of us use. Instead of that she's nonverbal, whatever she communicates with. Let's say how somebody does something, not what they don't do. Instead of saying he doesn't read, he learns activities. Just because you don't read doesn't mean you can't learn. When in our society, in our human earth society, did people start reading? Anybody remember? I mean, did cavemen read? We had to have the Gutenberg printing press in the 1400s. Before that, nobody read because there were no books. The only book was the Bible. And Catholic priests transcribed it. They were calligraphers. Okay? Kings and queens didn't read because they had the priests to read for them. So it wasn't until we got the Gutenberg Bible in the 1300s that Gutenberg made the printing press, movable type, and then people started printing books, and then people started reading. So from BC to 13 to 1400s, does that mean people were stupid? No, they learned by listening, by learning by activities. So just because you're not reading doesn't mean you're not smart. Okay? You're going to learn all kinds of other ways. Instead of saying she has special needs, she needs assistance with, and then just describe. This person's going to need assistance with this, needs assistance with that. I want to push the envelope. I want you to reframe deficits or problems into gifts, assets, or strengths. What somebody might have seen as a problem might actually be a strength. Those, people with disabilities, again, we give them these long lists of problems. People that don't have disabilities, like me, growing up, we just probably had one or two problems that we got in trouble for at home or at school. What do you guys think my problem was when I was growing up as a kid? What did I used to get in trouble for? You get one guess, quickly. Talking too much. Okay. I was called Chatty Cathy, I was called Motor Mouth. Now, we can chuckle about it now, but when I was a child, it was not funny to me at all. It was really very hurtful. Okay? I got in trouble in Sunday school, got in trouble at school, got in trouble at home. What if, whenever I was a little kid, somebody said, little Cathy's got the gift of gab. She could no more stop talking than she could stop breathing. Words must be important to her. Language must be important to her. In elementary school, let's put Cathy in activities where language is valued. Let's let little third grade Cathy, when she gets in trouble for talking during a test, tell her, as soon as you finish the test, little Cathy, go down and read in Mr. Jones' first grade classroom. She's waiting for you. And in middle school and high school, let's put Cathy in environments, in drama club. Let's put her in the yearbook. Let's put her in the newspaper, school newspaper. Let's put Cathy in environments where language is valued. Do you think when I was growing up and getting in trouble all the time, that anybody, my parents, school teachers, Sunday school teachers, anybody ever thought that one day people would pay me money to talk? Okay? So we saw a story in the news a couple of years ago about a young man with autism. He was a high schooler, 18-year-old. He was included in general classrooms. He was on the track team. Now he's running track. They had pictures of him running track. When he's running track, he doesn't look like he has autism, but when he stopped and the reporter was there, and his speech was a little bit affected, and some of us might have said, maybe he has autism. Well, he had been awarded, he can run almost 4-minute mile. Okay, it was like historic, right? And so he had already been awarded in his senior year in high school scholarships to like 6 different universities. And so the reporter's saying, well, gee, you've got to decide what university you're going to go to because you've got 6 scholarships. Yes, ma'am, I have to decide that. She said, well, what else do you want to do? He says, I want to run on the U.S. Olympic team. And maybe he will. Well, here's the thing. We look at kids with autism who become adults, and I'm going to come use you because you're close. So I'm the parent, and you're my little child with autism, and I'm going to hold you by the hand like this, right? Right? I mean, doctors have already told me she's going to be a runner. Or now talking about them eloping. They had 3 elopements today. Like, what? That is such... If people run away, they probably have a good reason for running away. You know? So I'm going to do this to you all the time you're growing up. And the first time I let go of you, what are you going to do? You're going to run. Right? I mean, that is learned behavior. You're going to run because you can. I mean, this is not rocket science, people. So anyway, this kid's parents, when he was diagnosed, they were told that. They realized that their son had a need for movement. He had a need to move. And so from the time he was little bitty, they worked with him. This is where and when you can run, and this is where and when you cannot. So what other people had seen as a problem, or as a deficit, they saw it as a strength, and they built on it. And now the kid's running an almost 4-minute mile. So think about what other people have seen as a problem, it might actually be a strength. You see, if somebody does something all the time, it's probably very meaningful to them, or they wouldn't do it. And because they do it all the time, they're probably pretty good at it. And so we need to build on those kinds of things. We also have to stop apologizing and explaining about people with disabilities, for their behavior, for the way they look, or for whatever. One of the ways that we're going to make sure that people with disabilities finally make a dent in the universe is by getting people out there. But a lot of people will say, oh, we don't want to take him out too much because the way he looks or the way he does this, whatever. Parents that come with autism, and kids, but this happens to adults too, maybe to a staff person. But the example I like to share is Mary, I'll make up a person. Mary is with her little 4-year-old son Johnny in the grocery store checkout line. Johnny has autism and he goes ballistic, right? And he's pulling all the candy off the shelves and he's on this floor, he's throwing a temper tantrum, he's flapping, he's screaming, he's biting his mother on the ankle, and everybody around her stops and stares. I mean, this could happen to an adult too. Stops and stares. And the mother grabbed the kid by the hand and he says, well, he has autism. And I'll tell Mary, I say, Mary, you're apologizing, you're explaining. No, Kathy, she says, I want people to understand that his behavior is part of having autism. And I said, that sounds real good in theory. I said, but really it's not about him at all, it's about you. You don't want people thinking you're a bad mother that's raised a brat. Because here's the parallel. Have any of you ever seen a 4-year-old child who does not have autism go ballistic in the grocery checkout line? Doing the same thing that kid is doing, okay? I mean, because I travel, because I do presentations, I get to travel. And I see people traveling all the time that I would like to have a meltdown. Traveling anymore, it's like, I'm going to have a meltdown every trip, just because, general principles. So you see that, so I asked Mary, you see a 4-year-old child who doesn't have autism do the same thing. And people are stopping and staring. Does that mother grab her kid by the hand and say, well, he takes after his father? Say, well, you might want to do that, but really it's nobody's business, okay? And so what happens is we try to explain, and people say, well, Kathy, we're just trying to educate the public. You're not going to educate them in the grocery checkout line or in the tomato section, okay? All people do is get this negative image, okay? I mean, have any of you, those of you that are married or have a partner, has your partner ever done anything that maybe kind of embarrassed you? Okay? But would you go up to everybody around and say, well, he's doing that because, he's got a lot of gas tonight, and, No, it's like it's nobody's business. I mean, we have got to protect the privacy and dignity of people with disabilities, okay? Nobody has a right to know. And we think because we talk about them so much in all these meetings and all these places, that we can just go tell everybody, everything about him. No, we cannot do that. I mean, everything I tell you about my son, or that I write in articles or my books, I have my son's permission. Okay? I've asked him, do I have your permission to tell that story? And he'll say yes. What about this story? No, Mom, no, you can't tell him that story. And so we've got to respect people's privacy and their dignity and their autonomy. That we don't have the right to do all this kind of stuff to them. Talk about them like they're not there, tell people stuff they don't even know, okay? So we've got to stop doing that kind of stuff. We also have to remember that, going back to the example of autism, we don't know that 4-year-old kid or anybody is doing that because he has autism. Not every trait or behavior is a consequence of disability. Oh, he's doing that because he has, Down syndrome. No. He's doing that because his grandmother died a month ago. And he's just now realizing she's not coming back. And he's grieving. Well, she's doing that because she has autism. No, she's doing that because she has PMS. She's going to start her period, okay? It's situational, it's environmental. This too shall pass, okay? If we think that everything a person does is because of diagnosis, then we got to write a goal for it. Got to do therapy for it. Instead of saying, no, it'll pass, okay? Right? This whole developmental age, chronological age thing is very dangerous, okay? And I know that sometimes we need it to use that concept for eligibility purposes, if a person is so far behind in this area or not. But I meet people all the time. Well, Kathy, my child is 20, but he functions at the level of a 5-year-old. Then how do we treat him?